So how does it feel being a knight? How does it feel? And and people have to call you sir.
Yeah, it's legally, yeah.
They legally have to call you sir, Darren Jacklin. How does it feel? It's like, wait, how many sirs do we have on the planet?
Very few people on the planet, yeah. In fact, there's over 400 people that were nominated globally.
Yeah.
Out of the 400 people, there were 24 people selected.
Oh, man.
And of that, 15 men and 9 women for the world.
Yeah.
There's 2 Canadians, myself and another lady, who was chosen for Canada.
That's amazing.
Out of, 38 million people in the country? And
that's amazing.
Yeah. Because most people in their mind, like they've heard of Sir Elton John or Sir Paul McCartney or Sir Richard Branson.
Exactly.
People say, well, I've never met a knight. That's what you see on TV or in a magazine.
Exactly.
Right? But never met somebody like that. Does that even exist?
I know. Right? I know. It's like, wait, that's what we see in the history channels.
Correct, yeah.
People getting knighted by the crown, right? Put 2 swords by the shoulder.
So after I got knighted to the official ceremony, I got a sword. I have a sword at home.
Right.
I took my oath. And when I came back, some people were meeting with me. They're like, okay, so what happens?
Yeah.
So like this, I put my hand on the floor and said, you know what, I have superpowers now.
No, I have superpowers. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, because we don't have money problems in life. We only have thinking problems.
Exactly.
There's no lack of money in the world. There's an abundance of money.
Yes.
It's about the mindset of thinking to solve a problem.
Yeah.
That's all it is. You're solving a problem.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of times people, you know, I was talking to a gentleman yesterday. He's a dentist. And I said to him, he says, you know, Darren, he says, I don't understand the money. We don't have money problems or thinking problems. I said, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
If somebody called you at midnight and said to do emergency dental procedure, like pull a tooth out, what are you going to do? You're like, I'm not getting out of bed at midnight.
Mm-hmm.
I said, but if the guy offers you $5,000 to go to your clinic right now, over to your clinic to pull a tooth out, would you do it? He goes, I jump on hand in a heartbeat.
Probably do it.
Right? So the thing is that you'll do it for everybody has a price. So the key thing is we don't have money problems, we don't have thinking problems. This guy has a problem to solve. If he's in pain or she's in pain, they'll pay the $5,000 to get a dentist out of bed at midnight.
Yes.
Right? Because they just want the result. They want to get it done.
Yes.
And so you solve the problem and you get paid for it as a fair means of exchange. So the key thing is it's opportunity zones. Is always look at when people are complaining or when you're watching the news and people are like, oh my gosh, all these things. Look at, oh my gosh, where's the opportunity zones? Where's the crisis in the opportunity there?
Wow.
Or what's the blessing in disguise?
Wow.
There's always an opportunity in a crisis.
Wow. Amazing. That's why during COVID, Sir Darren Jacklin started companies that totally put me in that immediately activating fear and flight mode. But with Darren, he just looked at the opportunity and said, "Oh, what can we do here? What are the opportunities that exist? How can I serve these people?" So that's where the difference is made.
Well, the thing is too is that you see we're in a global pandemic. We're all locked down. We can't leave our homes, right? So we gotta play by the rules. So the thing is, okay, so that's what we cannot do. We can't leave our home. We gotta wear a mask. All those things. Okay, great. What are other options?
Right.
Okay, other options. We've got the internet, right? We've got Zoom video conferencing.
Exactly.
We've got Microsoft Teams. You got Skype. You got all these different webinar platforms. You've got different social media chats like WeChat. We've got WhatsApp, all this stuff. So what we did is I got onto Zoom and I started collaborating with some people. And we're like, one of our buddies is a CPA, a chartered professional accountant of 35 years. And he's like, I said, what's your biggest problem right now in the CPA industry? He goes, well, the average CPA is 60 years of age or older. They're a baby boomer in North America.
Yeah.
And also is staffing's a problem. Okay, so great.
So you can't hire people.
Yeah. So you have a small little accounting firm. What if we went out and we raised a bunch of private capital? And during lockdown, people are like, well, how'd you do that?
Amazing.
Because it's easier to acquire revenue than to create revenue.
For the audience who are watching here, during the COVID period, when everybody's on the lockdown, nobody's doing anything, everybody's like me or fear flight mode, Darren went out there, spent 1 year, created a company that does 6 million revenue per year. Let me introduce Sir Darren Jacklin and his accomplishments. Darren Jacklin has personally trained 157 Fortune 500 companies over 23 years. Travel 48 countries on 4 continents. World-class speaker, corporate trainer who has personally trained over 1 million people in person globally. Here's a big one, okay? Here's one I'm proud of him of. Has rang the closing bell at NASDAQ not once, not twice, but 3 times in New York City. Global traveler committed to raising 100 million USD for global philanthropy projects through his International Family Foundation. independent board of director, member of EXP World Holdings, NASDAQ, EXPI, and multiple other paid international boards in real estate, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence. Active passive investor and partner in multiple companies internationally. He has built an international certified CPA firm called Profitopia to a multi-seven-figure business in less than 2 years. And finally, Sir Darren Jacklin is a decamillionaire. This book right here, best-selling author of the book Until I Become. I think this one's in a lot of countries, going international. And Darren has been a successful author as well. Darren Jacklin was also knighted by His Royal Highness of the Royal Family of Spain on Saturday, June the 4th, 2022. That's very recent, for his acknowledgement of global philanthropy and entrepreneurship. In July 2023, Sir Darren Jacklin is climbing to peaks of
Kilimanjaro,
in Tanzania, East Africa, which is the world's tallest freestanding mountain and highest point in Africa at 19,340 feet. This is the only Sir and the first Sir that I have met. Other people have to call them Sir as a politeness, but this is not out of politeness. This is his name, Sir Darren Jacklin. All right, so please tell us about yourself.
Well, I have a very unique email. I'll share a little bit of the backstory.
Yes.
People feel inspired by my success stories of when they research me online and do their due diligence. But behind that was a lot of adversities and failures and challenges and setbacks.
Okay.
And disappointment. When I was a young kid growing up, I failed grade 1 of public school in a little town, less than 20,000 people, called Swift Current, Saskatchewan, Canada. I failed grade 1 of public school. I was misdiagnosed with a learning disability and a reading disability in grade 1. And it was determined by the people in the school system to put me into what we call special education class.
Diagnose you. What do you mean by that?
Well, to me as a young boy, and reflecting back on my life, there was nothing wrong with me. I was just, my mindset or thought process was different. I didn't learn by sitting in a classroom. I learned by being in action experientially. So like for me, maybe a Waldorf or a Montessori school would have been a better option for me. We didn't have those back where I grew up, right? So I sat in a class and learned regurgitated information out of a textbook, and that's not the way I learned. So I'd look out a classroom window in school, daydreaming, thinking about what I want to do. After I get out of school, I wanted to go knock on doors. I wanted to cut grass, shovel snow in the wintertime, deliver newspapers, build my little rent-a-kid business. I started at age 7. And I was very focused in my neighborhood of solving problems in my community and taking care of my neighborhood. Yeah, at age 7, I started. And by the time I was 9, I hired my 2 best friends that worked with me in my neighborhood. We were out cutting grass, shoveling snow, delivering newspapers. And still to this day, I just turned 50 last year.
You don't look a day over 40, man.
No, we're still great friends.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so
amazing.
I've got decades of relationships with people. And so, so I went through the elementary school system, very low self-esteem, very insecure, never feeling good enough, feeling I don't matter, always wanting to be, never going to be smart enough, good enough, worthy enough, deserving enough. And then I got into junior high school, and then I got into grade 11 in high school, and it was taken out of class one day by a guidance counselor, a school teacher. Yeah. And they said, Darren, based on your academic marks, you're probably not going to go far. Oh, no. Probably won't graduate from high school, never go to college, never go to university. What do you want to do? I said, I want to build companies. I want to travel the world. I want to help people make a difference in the world. And the teacher and guidance counselor looked at each other and said, okay, how's that going to happen?
At which point do you realize that you want to do all of these things?
Yeah, so growing up, I was grateful because when I was delivering newspapers 6 days a week, I grew up in a middle-income family. I was going around all these different neighborhoods, and I would see people going to and from a job, and they weren't excited. And I see people who ran small businesses and large businesses that were in the middle-class neighborhood I grew up in. But I dealt with people from all walks of life that bought the newspaper from me every day, and I had a subscription with the newspaper, and I started to model and see successful people. One of the ladies who lived across the street from me ran for politics, Pat Smith, and she became the deputy premier of Saskatchewan in Canada where I grew up. And so when I saw this woman just being a regular housewife to then growing a political career to become very, very successful in the media all the time, and I delivered the papers for all the time. I cut their grass. I shoveled their snow. They lived right across the street from me. I thought, wow, this person's on television all the time, and I know them. I'm at their house 6 days a week. And so those kinds of things started to shift my mindset. Being around people and then being accessible to these people, I realized they're just like you and I. and they just have a work ethic. They have daily habits, daily routines, systems, and processes. And so that's what I learned at a very, very young age. And so I was just learning how to build my little rent-a-kid business, having a lot of fun, but I really enjoyed solving a problem and serving people.
Interesting. I want to digress for a moment right here. I noticed that there's a common trend with the conversation we're having before and the conversation we're having now. You seem to surround yourself with the right people at the right time.
Yeah.
For some reason, every stage of your life. I read this book. What touched me the most was your humble beginnings. You were selling your furniture because you needed money.
Yeah.
And you were in a very bad place. And you had to come up from there. That was your starting point.
Yeah.
And look at where you are now.
Yeah.
And there's a common theme again, which is your association with like-minded people, with people that are highly influential, highly wealthy, or just high performers in life. And you tend to have that. So I'm just curious, what got you to think this way?
Well, good question. So to me, growing up, I realized as human beings, because I was in special education my whole entire life. So I was trained and I thought differently. And some of it was childhood trauma as well, right? And so I realized at a very young age that as human beings, all we are is a network of conversations. You really think about it, we're having a conversation right now. And throughout our lives, we're going to have multiple conversations with people. So everything we want in our lives is going to come from having conversations with strangers.
Right.
Strangers, everything we want, need, and desire in our lives. But growing up, we're taught a lot in our environments, in our families, don't talk to strangers.
Yes.
Right? So,
yes, we are.
So then
we
people
don't talk to strangers.
Yeah, so then people go ask for a raise or go on a date or or go do something. It's like, oh my gosh, how do I do that? I'm taught not to talk to strangers.
Exactly.
So, and so the thing is, I learned at a young age, if I want something, it's all about having conversations. And what I realized was at a very young age, I was being trained in school to learn a lot of information, right? How am I going to learn, how am I going to figure this out versus the who? So rather than learn how, I built a network of who. Who can I have conversations with to help solve a problem, figure things out, and move things forward in my life? So that was a different mindset for me. So a lot of people go out and get formal education and degrees, which is great.
Yeah.
And they get smarter and smarter and smarter. Whereas me is I build a massive network of people.
Oh.
I have thousands of people on my mobile phone.
I can see that.
That I can access, right? Yeah. And so I have people on speed dial. If I need to solve something, figure something out, raise money, whatever it is, or if I'm having a challenge with a relationship with Tatiana or something like that, I got people on speed dial to call, to collaborate with, to walk things through, problem solve things, figure things out. So I call it a life team. So I build a life team, an inner circle of people around me that I can go to wherever they are in the world and access people by text message, email, telephone call, and solve things very, very quickly. And whereas most people try and figure things out or they procrastinate on things, I figure things out right away and then move forward.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of golden nuggets right there that I have picked up. Number one is the network of connections, the network conversations. I think that's a killer concept. The second concept is instead of you collecting knowledge, like what regular people does, they go to school, you're collecting people. What I want to do is I want to bring you to a little bit further in life, which is what your book discussed, that you were in East Hastings. So tell me about what happened there, that you were in I think it was the worst time of your life.
Yeah, so I was down and out. I co-signed 2 loans for 2 guys for business as a young guy in my early 20s. And because I had access to credit and I had a good credit rating with Equifax and Chinese Union Credit. So they came to me as an investor and I co-signed 2 loans to guys. And what happened was I collateralized everything I had, my car, anything I had, with the bank through a GSA called the General Security Agreement. I didn't read the legal print, but because I didn't have the experience, didn't know what to do, and I just didn't do it. So what happened was at that age, 120 business days later, the bank called a demand loan. Went after those guys. They weren't returning phone calls and demand letters. And they came after you. I was the co-signer, and they came after me, and they took my car, got my utilities cut off because my rent checks bounced, and so I ended up going on the streets homeless. I was actually in Vernon, British Columbia, Canada at the time. And so I was living in an apple orchard, throughout the few months. And then I also moved into a gentleman's treehouse and lived in his treehouse. Yeah, he'd split up with his wife. She moved back to, I think it was Belgium. And I moved in and lived in a treehouse for several months.
Paint a picture for me. Wait, what's a treehouse that you live in? How big was it?
I lived up in a tree. It was a fully furnished treehouse. I had to climb up the stairs and go into a treehouse. It was a kid's treehouse. And I lived in this treehouse for a matter of months, and that was my home in a treehouse.
That's amazing. You know what? Today, people have to pay Airbnb for that extreme special experience, but you're gonna do it for free.
Yeah,
I admire that kind of experience.
Yeah.
Paint me the picture of the two partners who got you to sign the business deal. Can you tell me exactly what kind of business deal, how they approached you? Just, I want more details.
So good question. So I was very insecure growing up as a kid.
Right.
Lack of self-confidence, being in special education. So what I did was, a kid, I used to take 10 Canadian pennies and put them in my left pocket. And every time I'd meet a girl, say good morning, good afternoon, hi or hello, I would secretly take a penny from my left pocket to my right pocket. Here's the life lesson. Here's the skill.
All right.
Whatever you lack in skill, you make it up in numbers. So what I did was, my goal was to every day transfer 10 pennies from my left pocket to my right pocket. And sometimes I had to go to 7-Eleven because they're open 24 hours, or Denny's restaurant because they're open 24 hours, just to engage and interact with young girls that were my age. And so what happened was, when I was in my early 20s, I got approached for this startup company, which is these two young guys were going to create an international modeling company.
Right.
And for people who watched that might remember, back in the 1990s, there was a company, well, this company still around, called Snap-on Tools. And they used to have the Snap-on Tool calendar girls. So these guys wanted to create a modeling company. They would go around to mechanic shops, auto body shops, and advertise their business on a calendar and have professional model girls modeling the product, doing product placement in the calendar.
That's a great business model.
And so I thought, well, what a great way to meet these models and these girls if I was the investor. So I got lured into this without any due diligence, and the business went bust. They spent all the money, and I was the co-signer.
In Chinese proverb, I think there is something that talks about beware of your urges for girls, because they could come back and bite you in the future. I think this is a great example of that. So what did they do that made the business fail?
So they just blew through the cash.
Were they in the business?
Well, I put in $20,000 in cash that I had, that I'd saved up.
That's a lot of money back then.
Oh yeah.
That's a lot of money.
I'd worked for many years, delivering newspapers, cutting grass, shoveling sidewalks, washing cars, raking leaves, all kinds of stuff to build up that cash over a period of time. They just blew through the cash. Plus we had overhead, we had rent, we had expenses, and these guys didn't know how to manage money that well. And they blew through the cash, and then when the money had to be paid back on the loans, these guys didn't pay, so I was the co-signer, so they came after me. And so I eventually had to file small claims court after these two guys. And I went to court one day, and the judge asked me, where's all my legal contracts? Because in the court of law, if it hasn't been written, it hasn't been said. And so lawyers do three things. Lawyers read paper, they write paper, and they defend paper. They write paper, read paper, defend paper. And so the thing was, I had no structured paper. No written agreements. It was all verbal. So I went to court. The judge called me up to the bench, and he said, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. He goes, young fella, he said, listen, he said, you remember this? He said, if it hasn't been written, it hasn't been said in the court of law. He said, you have to have paperwork. And so I just trusted these guys that they were going to follow through on their promises, be people of integrity. And because without integrity, nothing works. There's no workability. And I thought they would follow through, and they took off. And so I did file judgment against both of them a few years later in small claims court. But there's one thing to file judgment against somebody, another thing is to collect it. So you can have all the paperwork you want and say, I've got judgment on somebody that somebody owes me money, but they'll try and collect it. It's a different experience.
Totally different.
So I was never able to collect it.
So you lost that money. It's very single term.
But I lost the money, but I got the lessons.
First of all, how do you deal with that?
Well, it's challenging. It took me, a few years to restore my integrity with people. I had collections, creditors after me. I was behind on my taxes, everything like that. It was just a disaster. In fact, I was so stressed out and so financially backwards and upside down that I actually went to see a lady one time, a bankruptcy trustee, to file bankruptcy. I was in my early 20s, met with this lady, brought in all these demand notices and collection notices. I sat down with her, and she went through all those stuff. She goes, okay, you're young. It's going to take about 7 to 10 years to reset your life, at least 7 years. By that time, you'll be in your early 30s. You'll be fine. And so she says, we'll file for you personal bankruptcy. And she goes, well, how would you like to pay today? And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, well, my fee is $1,500 for you to file. I didn't know you had to pay to go bankrupt. You have to fill out the application fees.
That defeats the purpose of going bankrupt. It's like, I don't have any money. How am I going to pay you for it?
Well, I didn't have the money. So she goes, well, do you have a credit card? I said, no, it's maxed out. The other credit card got cut up. She goes, well, do you have an employer? I said, well, no, I'm on welfare right now. I'm homeless on welfare for a few months, right? And then she says, well, can you call your family? No, they won't return my phone calls because, by the way, I don't have a phone. My phone got disconnected. So I can use a payphone at the time. So she says, I said, I can't phone my family because I just keep calling for money and they won't return my phone calls or answer my phone calls anymore. She says, what about your friends? I said, those phone calls have already been made, right? I've already begged to them to get money. And she looks at me, she goes, well, Mr. Jacklin, and she takes my file folder and she folds it up and she hands it back to me. I said, what do you want me to do? And she goes, Mr. Jacklin, you cannot afford to go bankrupt today. So people have asked me all these years.
That's ironic. That's so
ironic.
ironic.
You've been bankrupt. Couldn't afford it.
I hear Tony Robbins, he always says this one thing. Situations happen for you, not to you.
Yes.
This
Nothing's
is a
ever
life changer.
Yeah, nothing's ever in your way. It's only on your way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just imagine.
They're blessings in disguise.
Just imagine if it's free for you to file bankruptcy.
Yeah.
You will have a little dent in your reputation. You will have a black mark.
And I've had situations in my life where I've had a lot of financial adversity and challenges.
Right.
And I remember writing in my journal, I'm like, okay, is this it? Like, is this the day I quit and throw in the towel?
Yeah.
And then I remember, one time I was like 4 months behind on my rent and my utilities are getting cut off. And I thought, okay, so I'm doing scenario planning, best case scenario, likely case scenario, worst case scenario. And I'm writing all down in my journal. And I come to the worst possible case scenario plan was that when they come to change the locks on the door, it's game over. But as long as they haven't changed the locks on my door, I'm still in the game.
Right.
I'm still up fighting and doing what I can do. And so I never ever got to the point where they ever changed the locks.
That's another golden nugget, which is you never quit and you stay in the game.
Yeah.
I guess for most people out there, they just quit when nothing like this happened.
Well, because most people take themselves out of the game before the game has even begun.
Yeah.
And if you look at it as a game of life, the thing is, chances are you're not going to die.
Yes.
Right? And
I agree with that.
And the thing is that what are you going to learn? You're going to go through uncomfortableness. You're going to have fears, doubts, worries, insecurities, embarrassment, all that stuff, which I've been through. But what you learn through the adversities, you learn mental toughness.
Right.
You learn situational awareness.
Right.
You learn you'll learn how to really deal with adversity. And I'm really good now, and that's why I can do things really, really well at very high levels, because I can compartmentalize and deal with the adversities and challenges. And then I can see people too when I meet people now. I'm like, okay, that person's just BSing me, or that person's going to quit, or that person's raising money and they're approaching me as an investor. I'm not going to invest in that company because that person, when things get tough, they're gone.
They will quit.
They can't deal with the adversity, the setbacks, the challenges, because success is a series of well-managed failures.
Right.
You got to fail forward. You're going to constantly, failure is just feedback. You're going to constantly be failing all the time. Right? If we're pilots and we go into a flight simulator, we're not having a beautiful flight.
No.
We're scenario planning for all worst possible case scenario situations.
Yeah.
Right? So the thing is, I always do things like, I hike a lot. I go hiking because the last few years hiking's transformed my life in terms of my weight and all that stuff, right? And I'll go out at nighttime hiking and I'll actually shut off my lights where it's pitch black.
I was going to say that. We had this over, just minutes ago at lunch. Darren was asking me to come on a nighttime hiking trip with him. I'm all game for it. It's a challenge. I love it. But when he talked about it, 12-hour hike, it was a 2-3 hour hike, 12 kilometers in the middle of nowhere, and there could be danger anytime.
Well, here's something to consider, okay? So people always ask me, is there wild animals out here? And I say, yeah, we're in a forest, right? So here's something to consider as a life lesson. The fear is real.
Right.
So honor that in your body. Feel the body sensations, the emotions, feel the sweat, the stress, the anxiety, the body tension, feel all that. And honor and celebrate that to your body. Give your body thanks that it does that as a protection mechanism to keep you safe. So the fear is real, but the threat is not. Think about that in life. Where is it that the fear, we're going to go on a date. Oh my gosh, what if I get rejected? What if they say no? What if I have a pimple? All this self-talk, this mind chatter. So the fear is real, but there's no threat.
Right.
Right? So many times people in life, they say, well, I don't want to make a phone call or a cold call or go ask that person out or talk to that stranger.
There's so much fear.
But there's no threat.
Right.
So when we go out into the forest and we're hiking, the fear is real. You're going to think, oh my gosh, a bear, a coyote, a cougar, a lynx, a bobcat, all these things. But there's no evidence in proximity that they're going to be attacked by anything.
Yes.
In fact, I've had a number of black bear encounters.
Right.
And there's ways that you talk to a bear, and there's ways that you can do things in terms of bear awareness that I can share with you from experience sometimes of how to deal with a bear in a situation. I've even encountered a mother bear and cubs out in the wilderness as well, and how you deal with situations. Again, it's scenario planning, right? And you prepare for things, always be prepared. Best case scenario, life case scenario, worst case scenario. But most people don't prepare themselves. In fact, when I do hiking, I actually over prepare, right? And the key thing is, just like in business, I always share with people, always over communicate. especially if you're borrowing money or raising money from
Right.
people. Because the worst thing does is somebody writes you a check, investing in your business or business opportunity, and then you don't communicate to them, and then their mindset goes, oh my gosh, what happened to my investment?
Yeah.
And then money goes through 3 different stages. Step number 1 is it's calm money. So when somebody goes through the discovery and due diligence, they invest in their calm. Step number 2 is cautious money. And step number 3 is nervous money.
Uh-oh. You don't want to get to step number 3.
No, you never want to be
Never
cautious or
wanna be
nervous
there.
money, right? You want to always have calm money
Right.
around you. And so you always want to have calm investments. That's why I don't do speculative investing, because I want my money to be calm, not
Right.
cautious or nervous money.
Right. Let's go back to the original story,
Sure.
which is, again, you were in Vernon, and you encountered these 2 guys who want to do business with you.
Yeah.
You co-signed. Didn't work so well. You had no money. You were going bankrupt. Luckily, things happened for you.
Sure.
That the lady you talked to did not had to charge you so that you didn't have to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
What happened next?
Yeah. So I managed to, I went back. I was staying at a friend of mine's house.
Yeah.
Living on his couch for a few weeks. And I realized that, okay, I need to make some money here.
Right.
So I went and got a job working on a watermelon farm. And I would go to the farmer's market,
Right.
and I would go sell watermelon on the side of the highway.
Right.
And we'd go pick watermelon in the morning, early in the morning, watermelon and cantaloupe, and go to the side of the highway. And I was there for a few days, and people come by and they'll spend, $5 to $10 on watermelon.
Yeah.
And this guy pulls up in a Lincoln Town car, and he gets out. He's an older gentleman. He's got this big Lincoln Town car, classic vehicle, and he gets out, and he's got a billfold of 1,000 Canadian dollar bills. He had 5 of them. He had 5,000 Canadian dollars on them. I thought,
Wow.
I'd never seen a $1,000 bill before
Wow.
back in that time. And so this guy he bought like $300 of the watermelon, and nobody buys like that kind of money, like $5 to $10 at the most,
Yeah.
but not $300 of the watermelon.
That's a lot.
And I was grateful because
That's a lot.
then
Watermelon.
I'm selling lots of watermelon,
Right.
and as soon as I sell it, the truckload of watermelon, I go back to the farm, right?
Yeah.
And so, anyways, I sell him all the watermelon. The next day, I'm on the side of the road selling watermelon because we're in season, and he comes by again. And this went on for like 3 or 4 days of
Wow.
him buying a few $100s each day of watermelon. I thought, this is really unusual. It's
Yeah.
really weird.
Yeah.
So like a 3rd or 4th
What's he
day,
doing?
I said to him, would it be possible we can get together sometime, like meet at a coffee shop? And he thought I was a farmer. He didn't realize I was farm labor.
Yeah.
And so he arranged to meet with me, and I went and met him, and I brought a journal with me to take notes.
Wow.
Because I thought, this guy's walking around with $5,000 in cash. This guy's he's a baller. He's done
Yeah.
something, right? He's got this
Yeah.
Lincoln Town car. He had an old big cell phone with the big antenna back in the early days. And so I met with him, and he took a liking to me. He said, I want to invite you out to my house. So I drove out to his house. He had like a 14,000 square foot log home. I borrowed a vehicle to go out there because I didn't have my car, because my car got repossessed.
Yeah.
So I borrowed somebody's vehicle, drove out there, and actually even borrowed money for gas to get out there as well. So I had some people who helped me out. And
You finance your way there.
yeah. And I arrived at this guy's
Yeah.
big, huge estate out in the country. And I go there and I knock on his door, and this young woman comes to the door, and she goes, you're here to see Harry. Come on in. So I come on in. She goes, can I make you something to eat? I'm like, I am hungry because I'm on welfare. I'm homeless.
Yes.
I live in a treehouse. I am hungry. But I want to be polite and professional and courteous, right? And so she asked like 4 times, can I make you something to eat? I'm like, no, it's fine. Anyways, he comes downstairs in this big, beautiful mansion, and he goes, hey, Darren, good to see you. Did my girl get you something to eat?
Mhm.
And I'm like, she keeps asking me, well, have her make you something to eat. And I thought, I don't want to put her out to make you something to eat. He goes, well, let my personal chef make you something to eat. And I thought, personal chef?
That's amazing.
That's another level. Like, how I'm trying to figure out how to pay my rent on time, right? Because I'm living homeless, right? And I got bills, all that kind of stuff, and I'm giving the guy where I'm living in the treehouse, I'm giving a little bit of cash, just so he'll, fair means of exchange, allow me to stay there, right?
Yeah.
Because I want to use somebody. And so anyways, his personal chef makes me something to eat, and I'm just blown. I'm thinking, how do you do that? Like, that's a totally different way of thinking.
Yeah.
To have a personal chef.
Exactly.
And so he started to be my mentor. And he would teach me about thinking, like that we don't have money problems in life. We don't have thinking problems in life. You can turn a crisis into an opportunity. You can monetize it. And I started to see all these different things that were invisible. Like, we would drive by an empty lot with a chain link fence around it,
Right.
with garbage around it. And he's like, what do you see? Well, I see a chain link fence with weeds and garbage. Get out of the car. He'd tell me to get out of the car, his Lincoln Town car, go up there. I said, what do you see? We get into this argument. I see a 36 unit complex, and I see this, and he's calculating all these numbers in his head, and it's invisible. Like, it's not even there. It's not even real. He's making it all up. And he'd see this 36 unit complex, 4 or 5 stories high. And then sure enough, 5 years later, there's something built there.
Wow.
You know, like this guy was such a futurist, and he would.
Wow.
So I had a chance to be around private meetings with him, and I'd come into meetings, and he'd have a banker, and he'd have a lawyer, he'd have an accountant, he'd have a real estate agent, he'd have a land surveyor, he had an engineer, had all these people around him, and he'd say to me afterwards, he goes, "You know what? I'm the dumbest guy in the group. I just have people around me that are smarter than me."
Wow.
But
That's very humble.
Yeah.
That's very humble.
And he was interesting because he had a grade 3 formal academic education.
Mm-hmm.
But he lived off his money's interest.
Explain that. Interest. That's another concept.
Yeah, so he lived off his money's interest. So we hear in the financial service industry,
Right.
you know, eventually someday you may be able to retire, you can live off your money's interest.
Exactly.
Right, passive monthly recurring revenue or residual income or investment properties, and you have from real estate, you have cash flow. But he lived off his money's interest, and the interest was $5 million a year.
Oh, wow.
So I have no idea what the principal was.
Yeah.
But the interest was $5 million a year.
It must be a lot.
And the time I met him, he'd owned over 3,900 real estate properties.
Right.
And he was a bank to many, many mortgages.
Wow.
So every month, rather than making a payment to the bank, a big bank, you're making a payment to his company. And he built a lot of financial wealth. But he was very low profile. Like you'd meet him, he was jeans and a t-shirt, very, very, very low profile, but very high impact.
Wow.
And he made big moves, and I learned a lot from him, and I was with him up until the day he died. And the reason why he was buying so much watermelon from me was he actually was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh,
and so what he was doing is he was buying watermelon from the side of the road, taking the watermelon home, giving it to his personal chef. She would juice it in a Vitamix, and then he was drinking juice to help him with a juice cleanse, a raw food juice cleanse, to help him with his health. On
that mentorship, I know that a lot of people are saying that to be able to get what you want, you need mentors. I always hear the word mentors. A lot of audience, they're having issue with finding the right mentor, looking for the right mentor, even being found. Okay, so take me back to the first day. How did you take a liking to you?
You know, it was a scary experience and an exciting experience. I felt fear and I felt excitement, both. The fear was, you know, am I good enough to be around a guy like this? Will he give me the time of day to even interact with me and engage with me? And the exciting part was that I was selling lots of watermelon, right? And I liked that because I like to sell watermelon because that's how I got paid, was selling watermelon.
Yeah. He needs watermelon.
Yeah. And the cool thing was that, you know, it was hot out there. It was in the summertime where I was really, really hot. And the thing was, is I had to stay out there until I sold the truck of watermelon because this stuff is, if not, it's going to rot, right? And we don't want to put it back in the field. We want to sell it. So I stayed out there until people bought the watermelon. So the faster I could sell it, the better off I was. Right. So time. So when I'd meet him, I thought, wow, would this guy give me the time of day to spend any time with me? You know what I mean?
So the first thing he did was he give you the time of the day. Let's say he would stop by, he would take his money out. How long did he spend with you?
Well, I started asking questions. I was very curious about his Lincoln Town car.
Okay.
Right, his car. The first day I met him, I noticed the $1,000 Canadian dollar bills.
Right.
And I thought, well, I shouldn't bring it up, right? Maybe he might be offended slightly. It's private, right? Yeah. And then by the third day, I kind of established enough rapport with him, you know, jokingly, because he'd come by. He was a familiar face to me after a few days. Right. And I just thought, wow, this guy's ordering a lot of watermelon each day, a few $100 each day. And then when I started asking about, you know, do you live around here? You know, you're from this area. You must really like watermelon. Just all small talk, casual small talk. And he was very polite, very friendly, and very enthusiastic. You know, really had, you know, an entrepreneur spirit inside of him, like high energy kind of guy, but really focused, right, and driven, and a real business guy, right? And was very polite and courteous to me and stuff. And I was reading a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Great book.
That I had with me.
Great book.
And you know, and in the farm truck, I had a cassette tape, an audio cassette tape called Personal Power 1 by Tony Robbins. And so I was listening to it while I was driving Personal Power 1 on audio cassette tape. And while I was sitting there in my lawn chair selling watermelon underneath the umbrella, I had How to Win Friends and Influence People. He noticed the book and he referenced the book. He said, oh, wow, you're reading the book called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I said, yeah, it's a phenomenal book. And then he said to me, you ever read the book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill? And I said, absolutely. I have that at home, right? Which is actually the treehouse, right? In a little bin. So we started to build rapport with each other, and that's how things started to unfold.
I see. So so the detail was he noticed that you're go-getter. Yeah. He noticed what you're reading. You're building your mind with all these knowledge. Yeah. And from there, he took a liking to you.
Took a liking to me, yeah.
That's very interesting.
And he became like a father figure to me as well. Right. There was a big age gap of, you know, about 50 years between him and I. He was in his 70s. I was in my late 20s. And so 50-year difference. But I think he liked my energy, because I've learned in my life now that you get around people who are older than you for their wisdom.
Yes.
You get around younger people than you for their energy.
Yes.
So go to people for older for wisdom, young people for energy.
Yes.
So I think he wanted to be around me because I had the energy and he had the wisdom.
Wow. That's amazing. Going back to the story now. So this mentor of yours, he took you under the wing.
Yes.
He showed you how he thinks, how you do deals, how to surround yourself with people so that you can build a bright future.
Yeah.
What happened later?
Well, we went to a restaurant called the Pantry Restaurant one day, and I'm flat broke. And I rode a bicycle there, and I parked my bicycle outside the restaurant. I go in to meet him, and part of me feels I don't want to be there,
right?
Because I can't afford to even pay for my own breakfast. So I'm having shame and guilt about this, and I'm embarrassed. And a part of me is like, I'm just going to have water. And he knew my situation. I was fully transparent with him. I put my cards on the table, like, listen, I'm upside down financially right now. I'm not doing well financially. So I walked in, and he says, what are you going to have to eat? And I hesitate, and he goes, I'm going to buy you breakfast. Because I think he knew by my hesitation I had no money. Right. And but I didn't want to take advantage or use somebody. I like to be a fair means of exchange, win-win.
Yeah.
And so he said, no, I want to buy you breakfast. So then while we're waiting for breakfast, he flipped over the placemat in the restaurant. He said, I want you to write down your 5 closest friends, the people you spend the most amount of time with, who you hang out with, who you associate with, right, during the waking hours of your day. And I thought, well, I don't really hang out with people right now. I'm just surviving, right? I'm doing whatever I can to hustle and grind and survive, right, to move ahead. So I just put some names down, that I knew, but I wasn't really in close proximity all the time with them. So he said to me, he says, how much is this person worth? And I'm like, I don't know, not much. I borrow from them, they borrow from me, And,
it's a barter society.
Yeah, like when I have a little bit of money, I help him out. When he has a little bit of money, he helps me out. We go back and forth. Yeah. Right? And hopefully we're not both broke at the same time financially. And so I read this out, and he says to me, he says, young fella, he says, listen, if you hang out with 4 broke people, you become the 5th like you are right now.
5th broke person.
Yeah, and I was a 5th broke person.
Yeah.
And he says, if you change your associations to people through a network of conversations, you'll change your life.
Yeah.
And I didn't quite understand that when he said it to me, but it made sense over time that the people I'm around are having direct influence and impact on me. And he was showing me that, here was a guy who was very wealthy financially, but the thing was, here I was completely the opposite. He had a lot of money, I had no money. And he said to me, he said, you don't have money problems like you don't have thinking problems. There's no lack of money. Right. He says, your first million will be your hardest. And then when you get $1 million, then it's from 1 million to 5 million, it's lonely. Right. And then from 5 to 10, you learn about multiplying money. But because 1 to 5 is lonely. And I've experienced that in my life now, practically. But the thing is that he showed me that my association, what I read, what I spend my time with, and then what I think has a direct impact on everything around me in my life. Right. And it came down to daily habits and daily routines. And how do I occupy and fill my space? And another thing was being related to my calendar. So I had a paper day timer back then. Today I use electronic calendars. And I always learned that if it's not scheduled in your calendar, it does not exist in your life. Right. So a lot of people say, people come to me, they're selling real estate, they're in business, like, I want to make more money. Okay, in the next 7 days, where have you scheduled in your calendar revenue generating activities? Yes, or income producing activities? You want to build wealth? Yeah. Where are your wealth building activities? What books are you reading? Websites what you're looking at? Videos you watching? People you're engaging with? Conversations, conferences, conventions, webinars, seminars. Where are you going that your life demonstrates with evidence? It's verifiable evidence to show you that you're actually on track. Like I have over 7,000 written goals for my life right now. Wow. My goal is to get to 10,000 written goals. It's hard.
Sorry, 7,000 written goals. What do you mean by that?
I have written goals. I have 7,000 written goals.
And you accomplish them?
No, I'm always accomplishing. I'm always adding and subtracting, checking them off, and then adding more. So I'm constantly...
Wait, and your goal is to get to 10,000?
10,000 written goals. Documented written goals. And so I'm constantly always doing that. Now, if you look at my schedule for the next week, 2 weeks, month, quarter, semi and year, you will see that my goals are in my calendar. Oh, but here's something I learned. Right. Most of your goals and dreams, because when I say to people, I have 7,000 written goals, people get overwhelmed. Oh my gosh, 7,000 goals.
Like, hey man, most people don't even have one. Yeah, you know what I mean?
But check this out. Yeah. Most of your goals and dreams don't require your actions. Right. Think about that for a moment. Most of your goals and dreams don't require your actions. It's about creating teams and teamwork.
Mm.
You can get apprentices, you can get volunteers,
Right,
you can get
right.
virtual assistants, you can automate, you can systemize, you can get grant money to hire employees to do contract work with you. There's various different ways that you can play that game of achieving your goals. But most of your goals and dreams don't, as I'm here right now doing this with you, I have people working on my goals.
Yeah, wow. That's pretty amazing.
Right?
That's why you can sit with me right here and talk
Yeah.
to you guys.
So the thing is, most of your goals and dreams, so those 7,000 goals, I have other people, teams, and teamwork. Now, I didn't start that way. I started with getting to 10 written goals,
Right.
which was a stretch for me to get to 10.
Yeah.
Then I went to 20, 25, 50, 100, and started to build it up over a period of time to get to 7,000.
So let me ask you, what is a typical day of Sir Darren Jacklin's life?
Yeah, so I wake up, if I'm not traveling, if I'm in Vancouver, Canada, my primary home, second home is in Vernon, British Columbia, Canada, the Okanagan Valley. So I'm up early around 5:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time Zone. Rain or shine, I'm hiking. So I will hike, in kilometers, between 6 and 10 kilometers a day. About anywhere from 4 miles to about 6-7 miles a day of hiking in daylight hours or in darkness by myself or with a few other people. And sometimes it's the same people. Sometimes it's people coming in to visit me, or I'm consulting or coaching with different people, so we take them hiking. And so that's how I start my day. I always start my day with exercise and mindset training development, right? So I always say the first 2 hours of the day is my time.
Right.
So it's self-reflection, it's thinking time, it's self-discovery time, it's reflection time, and it's gratitude time. And then I have a series of meetings, usually virtual meetings throughout my day now. So for efficiency purposes, I have teams of people that work with me through our group of companies, the Darren Jack Group of Companies. And then I serve on multiple different paid boards of directors and advisory boards. And then we have our own international family foundation called Link Foundation for Philanthropy that Ted and I have.
Yeah.
So I have things that are color coded. So no 2 days are the same. I do have recurring meetings every week that are scheduled, a year in advance with my team. So they're recurring meetings with meeting agendas, meeting attendees. So I have those weekly meetings, and I also have a briefing. So I have a weekly briefing on Sundays. So we look at a week ahead of what's going to happen between Sunday and Saturday. And then tonight you go through a scenario plan. So best case scenario, likely case scenario, worst case scenario from Sunday to Saturday. What are all the possible things that can go wrong this week? And we contingency plan and create plans for it. So, internet might go down. We might be traveling and there might be a motor vehicle accident. We may have back-to-back video conference meetings on Zoom. And if we carry over, then we have to have a contingency plan to let them know. So because the key thing is our word creates our world. Create our world.
Okay. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So what happens is, have you ever heard the saying in business that people say that talk is cheap?
I heard that all the time.
Yeah.
Talk is cheap. Put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah. So in fact, people say talk is cheap, but let's go a step deeper.
Okay.
Most people cheapen their talk.
Oh.
Because their words have no power.
Yes.
So what if your word, what you say, matters? So like if you say you're going to be on time, you be on time.
Right.
You gave your word to it. And because the thing is, your word creates your world. So to me, early is on time and on time is late. When I met with you today, I actually texted Patrick to let him know my ETA was 4 minutes.
Wow.
Okay? So because I knew I gave my word to be at a certain time.
Yeah.
And if I can't honor my agreement, my commitment, then I make a recommitment. I repromise something new. So I communicate in advance.
You never told me that there's a 4-minute commitment right there. If not, I've said something.
So I'll give you an example. So a while ago, I was on a Zoom video call. And I went in 5 minutes early to log onto the Zoom video conference. And I was being a guest speaker for this conference online on Zoom video. And I went on 5 minutes early. And when I went on, Zoom video conference, I had to do some security updates. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to take a few minutes or several minutes. So I had an email address for the person who was going to be the host that was going to invite me in.
Right.
I didn't have a mobile phone number for the person. I do now. I always have a primary and a secondary number now because I learned from experience from that. So I emailed the gentleman, but the gentleman's not looking at his incoming emails because he's letting people into the Zoom video conferencing room, all these seminar participants, right, for this conference. So I come into the conference, I'm like 4 or 5 minutes late. And when I come in, he lets me in, and he goes, oh, let's go in to introduce Darren Jacklin right now. And I said, can we just stop for a moment? And he's like, no, let's just carry on. I said, no, I want to stop because I'm out of integrity.
Oh,
see, I gave my word that I would be there, and I didn't honor my word. So now I'm out of integrity. So what's in the space is me as the presenter is out of integrity.
Right.
Now, people are going to be polite and friendly. Oh, don't worry about it. But in
Yeah.
the back of people's minds, people are thinking, is this person reliable?
Ah,
Right? So I wanted to
It's
clear
that
the space,
trust
clear
thing.
the energy,
that's pretty interesting.
and reset and refocus the room, the energy.
Right.
So I looked at everybody in the Zoom video conferencing through all the different screens. I acknowledged, I apologized, make it right, and I recommitted. 4-step policy, right? Acknowledge, apologize, make it right, recommit, 4-part apology. And I did that to restore my integrity, to ask if there's anything incomplete right now so I could reset the room. And I was modeling integrity to them.
Wow.
Because without integrity, nothing works.
That's
There's
very
no
powerful.
workability.
Exactly.
Right? So the thing is, see, if I show up, if you and I meet 20 times, and 19 out of the 20 times I show up early and on time, no big deal. That one time I show up
Yes.
late, you forgive me.
Right.
Because behavior never lies. Behavior never lies. So I always say to people, don't watch people's lips, watch their feet. Because the behavior will demonstrate what they do, because behavior never lies.
Yes.
Right? So when I take people hiking all the time, I had, yesterday, for example, I had 2 people that have been wanting to meet with me for the last 3 months.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, great. The only time I have is this time. I'm going hiking. We'll be there. So I emailed them the address, the All Trails app, so they could research the trail. It was a really easy hiking trail for them.
Right.
Both of them did not show up. Both of them did not know each other, but they knew they were going to be meeting each other. Both of them did not show up. They did not email, text, or voicemail me or communicate to me that they're not going to show up. So in the back of my mind now, what goes up?
Integrity.
Integrity, they're not reliable.
Not reliable.
Would you make it a priority to meet with them again?
No.
No.
Of course not.
Because they're time wasters.
Yeah.
Because you want to qualify and you want to protect your time.
Yeah.
So I haven't heard from them. They'll probably surface, but now they're not a priority to me.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm not going to take the meeting now.
I know I'm going there tomorrow, so I better have 3 alarm clocks set up, and you too. We
Right?
better show up.
Yeah.
It's a good lesson right here.
Because the thing is behavior never lies.
Yeah.
Right? So what happens is, people say talk is cheap. They cheapen their talk.
Right.
Now, what they should have done is said, listen, I'm not feeling well, or I don't feel comfortable, and text me in advance or email me or call me. Now I understand, because now they honored their word.
Yeah.
But when they don't show up, now I think they're unwrong, and they want to do some work with me.
Right.
So now I'm questioning, man, if you can't show up for what you give word to go
Yes.
hike, do I want
How
to
can
exchange
you?
money and exchange business
Exactly.
with you and be involved with you now? It's a different level.
Yeah. I like that. Wow. I feel like this conversation has been a ayahuasca trip. That's what I'm trying to tell the audience, is that, Sir Darren Jacklin is so interesting that 1 hour doesn't do it. You can't explain the whole story in an hour. You'll probably need to shoot episodes, a full season, or maybe 10 seasons, 20 seasons, just to get to know him as a person, to build a persona, because he has done so much. I'm sure every one of the 7,000 to 10,000 goals is a story of itself. I'm sure about that. So why don't we do this? Why don't we sum everything up? If there's one thing, one paragraph, one sentence you can say to the audience, what would that be?
Your success is someone else's miracle. So in your life, realize that the more successful you become, whether it's a parent, it's in a relationship, it's in your health, it's in your job, career, your business, your finances.
Right.
The more successful you become in that, the more you're a miracle to other people. Because never assume that you're not being watched and observed. People are always watching you and always observing you, right? Because behavior never lies.
Yeah.
So as people watch and observe you, people become inspired from you. They're inspired by watching you. And so you never know the ripple of impact that you'll have on people's lives, because there's people who know who you are, but you don't know who they are.
Yeah.
And with social media, you don't know who's following your pages and stalking you in terms of what you're doing. So you don't realize the ripple of impact that you have on people.
Yeah.
That, you're like, I look at my life growing up. Yeah, I had a lot of adversities and failures and challenges, but my struggles that I've overcome is somebody else's survival guide,
Right.
because I got through it.
Yeah.
And so somebody sees me, think, man, that guy's overcome financial pressures, adversities, challenges, all that stuff. Is he's gotten through it. It gives me hope that I can possibly get through it as well.
Yeah. Amazing. That well summed up. I think one thing that I would like to say to the audience is that I always remember Tony Robbins at UPW. He mentioned that you can live 2 ways. One way is you live as a warning to other people, and the other way is you live as an example to other people.